Opportunity Arkansas's Nic Horton. You can find Nic's work at opportunityarkansas.org.
And welcome back to the Wednesday edition of First News here on the 19th of February, 20 minutes in front of 8 o'clock. The Arkansas legislative session still ongoing, and here to update us on the progress is Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas. Nic, welcome back to the show. Are you surviving the global warming that's happening today?
Hey, welcome back to you, and thanks so much. Thanks so much for bringing this weather with you.
Yeah,
I really appreciate it.
I do what I can.
Yeah.
So it was actually it was a little warmer where I was. I was down by I was south of the Tropic of Cancer, so it was not the temperatures that I love. But so Nic, as we're kind of alluding to, I've been out of town a little bit, and frankly didn't pay very close attention to the last week or two of the Arkansas legislative session. But we're hitting about the halfway point of the session, and so what are your thoughts so far on how this session has gone? How would you score this at the halfway point?
Well, thanks again, because apparently when you leave town, Toby, all heck breaks loose.
Beautiful.
I wish I had, frankly, I wish I had better news to report, but I have to say, if I'm just being completely honest, and we talked about this the last couple of weeks with Rebecca, I'm really disappointed, and I think conservatives across the state are growing frustrated and anxious to see when are we going to get to the big wins? When are we going to see the big conservative wins? When are we going to see some tax cuts? When are we going to see a DOGE-style bill to actually reduce and restrain the size and scope of state government? When are we going to see welfare reform? I mean, we were promised and we were told, and frankly, there was a lot of anticipation and hope going into this session that we were going to finally start to take some big steps towards Medicaid reform and making the program better and more solvent and more sustainable for people that truly need it, and getting these able-bodied working-age adults off the sidelines and back into the workforce to help grow our economy. And frankly, we've been fleeced on that. The Department of Human Services put out, just very bluntly, a fake work requirement proposal that doesn't move anyone from welfare to work, and in fact is going to increase Medicaid spending by more than $40 million to hire success coaches. We've seen a bill now pass the legislature to expand the Medicaid services again at the cost of nearly $50 million under the guise of improving maternal health. We've seen a new free breakfast program created in the public school system with no income cap, not based on need whatsoever, but a universal free breakfast bill. So when I look at this session as a whole so far, it's really disappointing, and especially considering how exciting and successful the session 2 years ago was. A lot of us were hopeful that was just the beginning of a new wave of conservative reform, not the high water mark. And now I'm getting concerned that really was the high water mark. So it's been disappointing.
Are some of these bills being worked on and just haven't been presented? Like when you talk about Medicaid reform, when you talk about DOGE-style bills, when you talk about tax cuts, are those being worked on? Are they being presented to committee or anything like that? Or are they just not even being seen at this point?
There's chatter about some of those things, certainly behind the scenes. And, look, we're continuing to have conversations with state legislators, with leadership to say, let's get going. Like Kentucky, I mean, not exactly a deep red state, a state I love very much, as you know, but not a deep red state. They just passed a DOGE-style committee where they're going to be looking at reforming state government and reducing state spending. It's happening in states in Missouri. It's happening in states all across the country and all around us, and states that frankly are not as conservative as us. So, short answer is yes. I mean, I think we are driving and trying to drive some of those conversations, but we're not seeing any action yet. And again, when you talk about being nearly halfway through the session, basically all we've done so far, and this is a generalization, I'll say that at the outset, but a lot of what we've done so far is figure out ways to spend more government money and grow government more. And now we're being, even in a best case scenario, we're going to come back in the last half of session and get serious all of a sudden about rolling back state government. I mean, that would be a pretty dramatic shift.
Yeah.
I hope that happens. But I'm not seeing a lot of indication of that right now. I think the consensus at the Capitol, frankly, right now is there are not going to be any income tax cuts this session. And frankly, I'm not sure how there could be because we've spent so much freaking money.
Yeah.
We're spending the surplus day by day by day and making it extremely more difficult. And then you've got, frankly, bad tax bills that are being filed to create new exemptions and new carve-outs for special industries and special interest groups in the state. All of that revenue is going to be, if it passes, taken out of the state budget and diverted to those special interest groups instead of being spent on income tax relief. So, again, if I had to score this session so far, I'd probably give it a C- or a D. I hope we can turn the corner, but it's just been a massive disappointment, and I really don't think I could sit here and try to sugarcoat it and try to find some silver linings. And I'm hopeful that some of those are coming, but right now, we are just headed in the wrong direction.
Yeah, well, I hate hearing that. As we're talking with Nic Horton, the CEO and founder of Opportunity Arkansas. Of course, you can find all their work at opportunityarkansas.org is the website. Nick, I was looking at the non-debatable newsletter that just came out in the last 24 hours or so. You discuss a lot about some bills from people like Senator Kim Hammer and Representative David Ray.
No longer being recorded.
What am I hearing? I don't know what. Nick, are you still there?
My phone.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. So I don't need to yell at John Luke because I can yell at John Luke right now if we need to.
Well, go ahead and yell at him just for
John
good measure.
Luke!
But my phone is doing this new. If I lean my face the wrong direction by half a degree, it starts recording a phone call on iPhones now. So I
Look,
apologize.
better you than
it's done
us.
it to my wife. It's done it to my wife about 3 times, and she's like, "Why are you recording me? What are you doing?" So it's not just you, Toby.
Just loading up the artillery at this point.
That's right.
But
sorry
anyways,
about
going
that.
back to the non-debatable newsletter that came out yesterday, you discuss a lot about some bills from people like Senator Kim Hammer, Representative David Ray. They're in regards to our elections, canvassers, as well as ballot initiatives. This is all on the heels of the Secretary of State election review that came out on Monday. And so what's going on here with the election process? Is this a good thing, these bills that are coming through, or is this not such a good thing?
Well, it is, and I'm glad you brought that up because obviously we've spent most of our time this morning being a little bit Debbie Downer.
Sure.
So there are some good things happening, and those bills, I think, there's mixed opinions out there. There's certainly some conservative groups and others that are raising concern and freaking out. I think it's all for naught, frankly. I think, look, we said this in non-debatable last night. It should be difficult. I'm just going to say it. It should be difficult to amend our state constitution.
That's right.
This is a really serious thing when we talk about amending our state's highest governing document that is really difficult to change once something is in there. And so before we're going to put something in there, we better be dang sure that it's a really good idea. And so a lot of the legislation that's moving right now, you mentioned Senator Kim Hammer and Representative David Ray of Maumelle, they're frankly just putting some common sense guardrails in place to make sure that people know, as best as we can, that people know what they're signing. Representative Hammer, or Senator Hammer rather, has, I think, a really good bill. I wish I had thought of it as a good idea to require folks to present their photo ID before they sign a petition, just like we do at the ballot box now.
Right.
If you want to go vote, you got to present your ID. Just really common sense stuff, guardrails, frankly, to make sure that this process is not being abused. And we know it's abused. We have dozens and dozens of documented examples of this process being manipulated and people being lied to about what petitions do,
Right.
people signing multiple times. It's a really rotten process overall. And so these are common sense reforms that I think are really needed, and they're just frankly just good government, good common sense guardrails that we need to put in place to make sure that this process is protected. So we're supportive of the vast majority of these. Again, I think when you look at the initiative process, it's important. It's fine. We're going to have an initiative process. And I will say about half the states don't have one at all. So we're actually fortunate that we have one in Arkansas at all.
Right.
But if we're going to have it, we should make sure that it's protected and that it's that voters are protected from fraud and that there's integrity in the system.
Now, one other thing I wanted to hit on before we get out of here today, it sounded like you kind of mentioned it earlier, that maybe you're not a big fan of this free breakfast for all school kids bill that I believe the governor has signed at this point. I saw there were a few dissenters in the voting and they're saying things like that this is just giving rich kids a free meal on taxpayer dollars. And so tell me about this bill. Are you in favor of it, or do you not like how this is worked out as far as taxpayers paying for breakfast? What do you think here?
Yeah, we are not in favor of it.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would have been a lot easier to potentially support or at least be neutral on if there had been some sort of income cap. But yeah, it's a universal breakfast program that, frankly, I don't think we have a really good sense. I mean, there was a fiscal note that was attached to the bill, almost $15 million. But you listen to the commentary and the conversation in committee, I don't think we really have a good sense of how much it's actually going to cost.
Mm-hmm.
There were some good questions about, well, what kind of food are we giving these kids? I mean, there's been longstanding issues with the quality and the health of these meals, and now we're just going to just dole it out to anyone that wants it, and not necessarily doing anything to make our kids healthier, just giving them free food. I think there's a lot of concerns about it. One of the things, again, that we were told from the very beginning and in committee and otherwise was that, well, it's okay because it's only being funded with medical marijuana tax revenue.
Right.
And that, I think, got a lot of conservatives to say, okay, well, there should be an income cap and it's going to be expensive and it is a welfare program. And we already have, by the way, a federal welfare program that feeds these kids, and maybe we should just let them take care of it. But you know what? It's medical marijuana money. So what's the problem, Nick? Like, what's the harm? Well, then you read the bill, or at least I read the bill. I don't think most people did, but I read it, and it actually authorizes the use of general revenue for this program. And so, wait a minute. We were told medical marijuana money only. The bill clearly says that general revenue can be used. Well, that seems like a little bit of a bait and switch.
Right.
And then you talk about how the general revenue expenditures directly affect our ability to continue to reduce income taxes and put more money, think about this, put more money in the pockets of these families so that they can feed their kids. But instead, we're going to take that money into state government, and the state government is going to figure out who and how they want to feed and how they want to spend the money better. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of layers to this that just don't make sense, that aren't good policy. And frankly, there's a lot of herd mentality and groupthink with some of these ideas that are being pushed through the legislature right now. And, the momentum was there to get it passed. It created, as well, just to, continue, put a bow on this, a food insecurity fund,
mm-hmm.
which, I've often said to folks around the Capitol, like, food insecurity, the concept of food insecurity is really the equivalent of like gender fluidity and some of these other woke terms that are being floated out there. I mean, food insecurity is not a conservative notion. It's this liberal buzzword that the left has come up with to pigeonhole and force conservatives to admit that they don't care about poor people. They don't care about people that are starving. They don't care about people that are going to come where their next meal is going to come from. Mm-hmm. It's a total myth, and it's a total trap that I think conservatives have fallen into. Well, now we've created a food insecurity fund in the state of Arkansas. And every session now, we're going to have a debate about, well, we really should put some more money in the food insecurity fund. We really don't have enough money in the food insecurity fund. We really don't. It's going to become a political football that we're just going to have to constantly debate now. So anyway, I know we're out of time.
Yes.
But I think there's a lot. He said yes.
Shut up, Nick. I don't want to lie to you.
Yeah. The snow is melting. You've talked so long, Nick. But no, I think it's bad policy. And again, I put it on that list of things that are just disappointing.
Yeah, and there's definitely a lot of layers to it, especially when we talk about the financing of it, and then the number one question, which we won't be able to hash out here, but the number one question that comes to me is that are you going to have enough food at every school for every kid, because not every kid is actually going to take the meal also, and so that becomes one of the questions I think about as well when it comes to how much money you're going to lay out for something like this. But of course, you can see Nic and all of Opportunity Arkansas's work at the website. It's opportunityarkansas.org is where you need to go. Nic, always appreciate you stopping by, and we'll do it again next Wednesday.
Hey, I look forward to it. Thanks, brother. Glad you're back.